Hello, I'm Brian Fox. Welcome back to I Hate Rock Music. And today I'm going to do a video on a pretty controversial record for some reason, Attila, Billy Joel's power duo after he left the Hassles. And so he took the drummer with him and started a duo with just a drummer and then a organ and keyboards. And a lot of times they're put through a stack of Marshalls with a wah-wah and all kinds of effects. So it kind of makes up for the fact that they were just a duo and no guitar player. And Billy Joel also did the bass parts with bass pedals and whatnot. So a really interesting concept. But the record, of course, is controversial because you look at the cover and it has two guys dressed like Huns in a meat locker. So kind of a disturbing cover. I bought it probably about 1970, 71 in cutouts, and I had no idea who Billy Joel was. And I certainly didn't know anything about Attila. But I got it home and was disturbed and wowed. I'm still not sure what to think of this record, but it's got a really bad reputation. A great quote is Stephen Thomas from AllMusic said, quote, undoubtedly is the worst album released in the history of rock and roll. Hell, the history of recorded music itself. There have been many bad ideas in rock, but none matched the colossal stupidity of Attila, unquote. I can respect that opinion. It's definitely one of those records that on a good day, you can glean some of its charms, and on a bad day, you can fully agree with that assessment. But the band, of course, is out of New York City. Billy Joel on keyboards, vocals, and bass pedals. John Small on drums. And they were around from 1960 to 1970. Of course, by 1970, Billy Joel released his first solo album, Cold Spring. I think it's called Cold Spring Harbor, and mapped out the career he would follow after that. But the Hassles were pretty much a hard rock band, and then he decided to get on the really heavy stuff that was coming out and form this band, Attila. And it ended badly because Billy Joel ran off with the drummer's wife at some point. But the album was released on Epic in July 1970, and even Billy Joel disowns the record and calls it, quote, psychedelic bullshit, unquote. And apparently they only played about a dozen gigs and released no 45s. And of course, the album didn't chart at all. But I don't know. Like I say, I appreciate the weird concept they came up with for the music and then the audacity to create that album cover. So I give them kudos for that. And then when you go through the record, it does have some interesting moments. Wonder Woman opens up. It's a pretty opens up the album. It's a pretty convincing rocker, great drumming. Sometimes Billy Joel sounds a little bit like Robert Plant, but I don't want to sell that point too much. But lots of keyboard overdubs, and then California Flash, Revenge is Sweet, or more rockers, kind of in the proto metal zone. But the keyboards kind of give it a progressive feel, and there's obviously a lot of improvisation on the record too, with a lot of keyboard stuff. And then there's a two-part thing called Amplifier Fire. The first part's Godzilla, and the second part is March of the Huns. And there's some really, in part two, March of the Huns, there's a lot of really great heaviness, a lot of noisiness, and mostly instrumental. And but sometimes with the keyboards, it kind of reminds me of Soft Machine, but there are only bits and pieces on the record that remind me of Soft Machine, but he used kind of an amplified keyboard, much like Mike Ratledge and Soft Machine. So there's that elements of it. And then Rolling Home comes on. It's pretty fast, once again, pretty heavy, a lot of weird noises and stuff. So I appreciate a lot of the noisiness of it and the improvisation and just the overall weirdness of it. And then it has a song called Tear This Castle Down, which is more like prog rock. So a slight departure from the rest of the record. And then Brain Invasion finishes out the album. And it's definitely a little more jazzy, a little more prog, and all instrumental. And then just before that, a song called Holy Moses, which once again is really heavy and has some pretty over the top vocals. But the only way you can decide for yourself whether this album is any good at all is by listening to the record. And as always, I'll put the link below and you can check it out. But I'm sure it's going to divide a lot of listeners like it always has. I'll just add one last thing that I've already mentioned, but I want to reiterate. I don't know where I land on this record. I'd love for people to put comments what they think of the record down below. I'm just really curious of what other people out there think of it. I'm sure there's, as always, since it was released in 1970, there's going to be a lot of people that hate it and a lot of people that love it. As I mentioned, I just think the cover's so audacious, the concept's so audacious, the results are so over the top and strange and weird that I find charms in it. And I don't listen to it very often, but every time I do, it's definitely unlike anything else I've ever heard. And the bottom line is, I think both sides are right. I think there's every reason to love it, and I think there's every reason to hate it. So I don't say that about too many records that I talk about, but this one is definitely up in the air, and your appreciation of the record could change from day to day as well. It's definitely one of a kind, and it's a reasonable collectible right now. Hasn't reached the higher echelons, but it's getting up there, and a lot of people consider it a novelty. And in a way, it is a novelty just because it's such a unique concept. But anyway, got the link below. Check them out. Attila, love them or hate them, there they are. I'm Brian Fox. Thanks for watching I Hate Rock Music.